Welcome to the Adventures in Learning podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Diane. And if you've been following along for a while, you know that I love to travel. I think that our best adventures in learning happen when we get out and we're able to see the world through other eyes. And I've been fortunate enough that I've had some pretty special adventures over the last few years, including a couple with Rhodes Scholar. I've traveled to Antarctica. I've traveled across the Canadian Rockies on a train. And most recently, I've been to the Galapagos. And I am so excited to welcome somebody from Rhodes Scholar today to talk about the importance of travel sustainability, about building relationships across cultures, and about the power of travel to connect us, to light up our worlds. I've got Bryn Geddes with us today. She is the sustainability manager at Rhodes Scholar, and I am so happy to have her with us. Wonder, curiosity, connection. Where will your adventures take you? I'm Dr. Diane, and thank you for joining me on today's episode of Adventures in Learning. Bryn, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
So, Bryn, you've been with Rhodes Scholar for a bit now. Can you tell us what you do there and how you wound up in this position?
Yeah, sure. So I am the senior manager of program sustainability at Rhodes Scholar, and I work primarily within our programs department. So I work with all of the folks who um, manage and operate our programs, and I help them to work on different pieces of sustainability because our overall goal is to have all of our programs be more sustainable as opposed to just having a small collection of programs that are sustainable. And this is pretty ambitious because we have almost 800 unique itineraries.
Wow.
So yeah, it's a lot of different problem solving, and there's no one size fits all approach for this. There are certain things we've standardized, and so I'm working with teams to train them, to train our group leaders, and to just problem solve some of those trickier things that we have. Single-use plastic water bottles. That's a big one for people everywhere, but particularly when you're traveling. So that's something that we look at kind of across the board on our programs. We look at food waste as well, which also tricky when traveling because for so many cultures, a lot of food means that they're showing you a lot of love and a lot of respect. So we talk about those types of things, but we're also digging in deeper and trying to figure out how we can impact change at a destination level. We have a lot of programs all around the world. We've just celebrated our 51st year. So that's we have an impact, and we want to make sure that we are leaving the world and the places we visit a little bit better off, and make sure that we're having the best both social and environmental impact we can have as travelers.
And I guess that would be a good question for somebody who might be new to this conversation is, what is sustainability and why does it matter so much?
Yeah, huge question. Let me fumble through that. So I think we'll think about it. We'll think about sustainability within travel, and because that'll narrow it down a little bit for us. Um, to get places most of the time, particularly if you're in the U.S. and you're going anywhere else, you're flying. Um, there's no getting around the fact that that's the highest amount of carbon emissions that we are making as travelers. So um, that's tricky, and that is something that we're keeping an eye on the airline industry. We want to know what they're doing, how they're adopting more sustainable practices, if they're adopting things like sustainable aviation fuel and all of that. And that's a rabbit hole that we could go down, but we'll get lost quickly. So there's kind of no denying that there's an environmental impact by flying. Um, what we have the most control over is what happens on our programs. And so our focus is to help look at each of our programs and assess the areas of sustainability that we've identified as being super important. So there's some obvious ones. Minimizing our pollution, our waste on our programs. So thinking in this way, we'd think about plastic water bottles. Um, we have an opportunity to reduce those. Not every single place that we travel. There are some places where it's going to be unavoidable, at least right now. But there's a lot of places where the water is potable, it is safe, and we can refill water bottles. Everybody has one at this point, and we have them that we can give out as well. So that's a big focus, right? We're reducing our waste. That's one piece of it. Minimizing our environmental impact. So this looks a little bit different depending on the type of program. If you're on a cultural program where you're in the city, maybe you're not noticing this as much. But if you're on a hiking program or a program in the Galapagos, like you went on, there's rules that we should be following. So we've recently put out what we're calling our sensitive activity standards. And this is we're first working with all of our partners who operate programs, and then we're going to be working with our group leaders and making sure that we have these set standards and we're in compliance with them. So if we're thinking about hiking in particular, leave no trace principles. Any enthusiastic hiker can recite those, and they know that we need to make sure that you're taking pictures and leaving only footsteps, is what they say. So that's one piece of it, and that can also look differently depending on the type of program. We want to make sure we're protecting wildlife, taking care of animals. Animals are a huge part of why people travel to a lot of places. I know in particular, you and I had chatted previously about penguins and
Right.
and your opportunity to see them. So our I think travel can be an incredible tool for conservation. Seeing these animals in these places like penguins in Antarctica or rhinoceros in Africa when you're on safari, that's going to inspire you and make you want to protect them. So that's a really important piece as well. But one of the big things that I think gets ignored often is a social sustainability piece. So when we're visiting and have programs going to a small community, and this is true of any type of travel, you can have an impact on that community. So our focus is or one of our many focuses. There's so many to choose from, but figuring out how we're having both a positive impact by spending money with local businesses and otherwise, so that we can make sure that money is staying in that community. That's really, really important in travel. And it's something that, looking into if you're going with a tour operator, you can look into some of their practices and see where they stand on that. But also, just as an individual traveler, taking a little bit more time just to look around, do a little bit of research, that will help to ensure that maybe you're working or you're spending more time and more money with a locally owned business. And that's super important because we want to make sure that the places we visit are sustainable in the sense that we'll be coming back for the next 50 years. And so that's a really important piece. And that's really just touching very top of what sustainable travel can look like, and certainly how we're approaching it at Road Scholar.
That makes a lot of sense. And I love the fact that cultural sustainability is a part of that, that when you're traveling with Road Scholar, you employ guides who are local, that, they know their communities, they understand the impact. I think that really does create a better experience for the traveler, but it's also more authentic. And I would imagine helps sustain the community as well.
Yes, yeah.
And I know you and I, when we were talking before, you had mentioned that Rhodes Scholar has created sort of a long-term vision or plan that you're putting into effect, and you're sort of in the beginning stages of it right now. Can you talk a little bit about what that's going to look like as it unwinds?
Yeah, so I leaving room for evolution there. But what our I've mentioned this previously is that our focus is ensuring that each of our programs becomes a bit more sustainable. So if if one program is perfectly sustainable and everything we do is like gold star, the most sustainable thing, we're giving back to the earth and the people and everything is great. That's a really beautiful thing. But we, as I said, have almost 800 unique itineraries. So what we need to do is our first step is making an imperfect approach on each of them so that we're doing something everywhere. And then from that, we will continue to grow that effort and make sure that each of our programs improves its sustainability bit by bit. So we started by doing some auditing. Our next step was to develop trainings for all of our teams. So this includes the folks that are developing the programs and operating them, our group leaders, and then helping make sure that the information we're presenting on the ground when you're on your program helps participants understand how they're contributing to a more sustainable type of travel. So that's really where we are right now. And then long term, my goal will be for that to just continually improve on each type of program that we have. And then as we learn more, because we're not static, we're always learning new things about sustainability and new approaches, we'll be able to adopt those. And then the longer term vision is to be working at a destination level with other stakeholders in tourism to help places to improve and adopt more sustainable models so that it's benefiting both the communities that are being visited and not harming the environment. That's really important to us. And that's definitely a long-term thing because each destination that you work in is a project, and we have programs in around 100 countries. So there's lots of work to be done.
It reminds me a little bit as you're talking about the approach that we as educators take. When you're in the classroom, it's not one size fits all. You've got your standards, but each child is individual and they're unique, and you want what's best for that child. So you meet them where they're at, and then you help them to grow. And it sounds like that's a lot of what you're doing there.
Yes, absolutely. When we work with each of our different partners, we can't treat a program in Costa Rica the same way that we treat a program in Texas or a program in Switzerland. All of these are very different places and
Right.
there's different needs and there's also different infrastructure. It boils down to things that we don't have a lot of control over, but we can have some influence longer term. So we are attempting to look at each of these puzzle pieces, a regional puzzle piece, if you will, and really assess what's the biggest thing that we can do to make a difference here and focus in on that. And then, like I said, we do have some kind of standards in general that we want each of our programs to meet. But those are things that we feel like with training and implementation we can ensure we're doing. And then there's just those trickier pieces where it's changing maybe the way that people approach how they run a hotel, which is like not everybody needs a plastic water bottle when the tap water is safe. But that's that's some changes that have to happen in the way that the entire tourism industry operates.
Well, and I think that some of that is systemic, particularly I'm thinking in America in terms of what we have come to expect as luxury in quotes.
Yes.
Um, I was at a hotel last week because I was speaking in Alabama, and I noted that my hotel came with 3 plastic water bottles, none of which I opened or used, because I'm looking at it thinking, I have a water bottle with me. I don't need this. But I think that it's like this automatic assumption that if you're staying at a hotel that's at whatever level, you walk in and expect to see treats or water bottles or whatever. And it's not necessary.
Yeah, the idea of hospitality and convenience, I think, get confused. And I used to work in our operations department, and this is something that I noticed a lot, and it's kind of a foundation for how we work with our hotels is we ask questions about, do you provide plastic water bottles, especially if we're in an area where we know the drinking water, the tap water is safe. We ask about changing linens and towels, right? That's something that we need to think about because the massive use of water that it takes to wash those every single day
Right.
has a big impact, particularly if you're from a part of the world like where I am in the Southwest US, where we're in a drought. We're almost always in a drought. We don't
Right.
need to change our sheets and towels every day.
And
So
if we
there's
were
some
at home, we wouldn't be doing that.
exactly. So there's some behavior both on our participants' part, but also on the part of the hotel. And I know that in a kind of post-COVID world, hotels have adopted some different approaches, and many will just do towel and linen exchange on request, or maybe every 3 days. We think that's great, but just it would. I want to make sure I state this that. Checking in when you're checking in at a hotel, asking about how often they change towels and sheets is a great thing to do. And if they have a policy where they change every 3 days or only on request, or you have a little placard that you set out if you want them changed, uh, do that, but still get your room cleaned because that when we're thinking about sustainability, we're also thinking about the social side of things, right? And those are jobs.
Right.
People rely on those jobs. And that's another piece that we've had a lot of discussion around how we phrase things when we're communicating to hotels and how we want our group leaders to speak, because we certainly don't want to have a negative impact in being like, nobody get housekeeping, when really it's
Right.
just
You don't want to
reuse your
put people out of a
towels.
job either.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's I mean, it's tricky. It's a like I say, it's behavior change, but it's also really trying to think fully through the way that we travel and the way that the industry is set up. Because we're really entrenched in these styles of, receiving the kind of convenience and making things nice, but don't always think through like the full picture of what it is.
That makes a lot of sense.
Imagine a space where curiosity drives innovation, where empathy fuels collaboration, and where learning feels less like a task and more like an adventure. My message isn't about adding more to your plate. It's about changing how you see the plate entirely. I'm Dr. Diane Jackson-Schnorr, and through the power of purposeful play, I equip leaders, educators, and organizations with the tools you need to unlock creative problem solving, deepen human connection, and build resistant ecosystems of empathy and innovation. Attendees will walk away not just inspired, but empowered, with immediately usable strategies to spark curiosity in teams, to lead with empathy, and to infuse learning into their everyday cultures. You'll learn how play isn't child's work. It's the secret weapon of the world's most effective leaders and change makers. This is not a feel-good talk that fades by Monday morning. It's a movement, a shift in how we engage people, solve problems, and lead meaningful change. My talks and workshops are shaped by decades of experience in education and a transformative message that connects across sectors. Whether your audience is corporate, educational, or nonprofit, they'll leave ready to rethink what's possible, both personally and professionally. Because when we learn and lead through play, We don't just change organizations, we change the world. Check it out at drdianeadventures.com.
You know, Bryn, you mentioned that you had been in the operations side of Rhodes Scholar as well. One of the things I know our listeners are fascinated by is how people go about their adventures in learning, how you wound up where you are, particularly in the travel industry, which is adjacent to STEM and STEAM because there's so much science involved. You know, you've got the cultural connections. How did you end up in the travel industry?
I think like a lot of people, it's a long story.
Go ahead.
So great. I I went to undergrad because for anthropology and archaeology. So really practical stuff. And I wanted to be an archaeologist, and I through that had the opportunity to travel to a number of different places and work at archaeological sites. So I worked in Italy for a summer, a hot summer digging holes. And it was an amazing experience because I was working with a group of American students, but also a group of Italian students. And what really struck me about that experience was not so much how much I loved to dig holes and draw maps, which is, you know, fun sometimes. But it was the fact that when we got done with work, it was, hey, becoming friends with some of the Italian kids. It was like, hop in the car. We want to take you to this really cool town that's 15 kilometers away, and we're going to eat dinner and just hang out in the plaza. And you get this experience that was so unique. And then I also had the opportunity to work in Peru twice. And that really had a massive impact because it was a place that I had never been, and a place that was just showed me that the world can look and feel very different, but people are all really interesting and engaging. And the opportunity that I had there on two different occasions really just solidified that I loved the traveling that I got to do. I loved how I got to interact with people. And maybe I didn't want to dig holes. It was, I do love archaeology. I wasn't sure that I wanted to be in college for many, many years and then go down the professor track and all of that. So I thought about it a bit. I found out about a sustainable tourism master's program, which I went into and learned a lot, and really kind of got to take all of the anthropology pieces that I learned and the science stuff that I love and dig in a little bit more on the environmental piece. So I wish I could say that from there it was a straight line into the travel industry, but it definitely wasn't. I worked in recreation, outdoor recreation, kind of gear, that sort of thing. I also worked in events and marketing because that was really adjacent to travel for me. And then eventually it all kind of pulled together, and all each of those experiences informed the next. And so I landed at Rhodes Scholar at the end of 2022. And like I said, was working in operations. So throughout my career prior to this, I had pursued some project management as well. And I really think that was probably the smartest move I made of any educational pieces was doing that, and just being able to focus in on fine details and then pull it back and look at the big picture and being able to see the forest for the trees.
And what makes Rhodes Scholar special in your opinion? Because I know at one point you told me you're not somebody who drinks the Kool-Aid.
Yeah, I am not. I generally reject it and don't want to be at the party. Just There is just something special about Rhodes Scholars. So, the people that I've had the opportunity to work with for the past 3.5 years are all excellent, smart, curious, critical thinkers. And I think that's really a nice experience to be able to go and engage with people and I've found that uh, there's not just especially in this role, it's not just a cakewalk. Like people are going to challenge you and ask questions and seek for you to improve the process, which just makes you better. So I feel like in that sense, it's been really a cool experience for me to focus in that way. But Rhodes Scholar as a whole is unique. It's an organization that's has a set of values that it actually does follow, and the folks who work there um, tend to stay there forever. You know, we have a ton of people who've worked at Rhodes Scholar for 30 plus years. And
That's
that's to
unusual.
me, yeah, to me, that's incredible. And not something that anyone in my generation is like, we don't believe that that happens till you see it. So that has been, I think, being able to find an organization that has values, that it actually follows, thinks critically about things, tries to understand like, hey, are we doing this to the best of our ability? And also just the fact that, and I might be in a unique position because I am the person who works on sustainability full time, but there's just a trust that I'm going to think through things and then bring it to the people who make decisions and work to hone all of those details. So, yeah, I have drank the Kool-Aid, and I do feel very lucky that I'm in an organization that's just so thoughtful about how they approach every piece of the business, if you will.
Well, and I love what you were just saying about critical thinking and sort of that passion, the environmental care. And I'm thinking you have an opportunity to travel, I'm sure, with Rhodes Scholar. Are there particular trips that have been your favorites? And are there things that are still on your bucket list of places you can't wait to travel as part of the adventure?
Yeah, I mean my bucket list grows daily. So I've just completed a project where we've reviewed every itinerary that we have. Um, and that has been really inspiring in the sense that now I'm like, well, I know I need to go to like 40 different programs and I don't have enough time to do it. So it's hard to choose what I want to do the most, but I love hiking. I love being outdoors. So you could put me on any one of those programs and I would be happy. Patagonia is huge for me. I've loved my time in Peru, and I did not get to spend nearly enough of it going and having fun. So any of those programs I think would be spectacular. Um, it's really hard for me to choose. So I'm going to just focus in. That would be top destination. And then when I worked in our operations uh, team, I worked in the Southwest, and I all of my programs were in New Mexico. And New Mexico is just such a special place, and the people that we have who who provide lectures on our programs, who welcome us into their homes or onto their farms to show us things, they're incredible. And those experiences are fantastic. So really, you can't go wrong with a single one of those programs. Um, and yeah, I wish I got to go on more programs. I do find myself going to a lot of conferences, and I need to adjust the way I approach conferences so that I go and have an experience outside of a lecture hall.
Right. And that's the hard part because while conferences are rewarding and fulfilling and a part of the job, they're not getting to be out and in the community.
Yes, yeah.
I found myself thinking that last week in Birmingham because I spent 5 days inside a hotel ballroom because I was presenting. But I did Wednesday night. I was able to take myself out and I went to the 16th Street Baptist Church and I sat on the steps and listened to the choir sing. And I found myself as I was doing that, it was an incredibly powerful experience to feel that and to walk a little of the civil rights trail. But there was in the back of my mind going, I bet Rhodes Scholar has a program for this.
I was just thinking, we have a great program that goes through there. We have a few civil rights programs, and that one is pretty spectacular. But yeah, there's something, the wonderful thing about travel is that you can go and just sit down and listen and see the people and watch life happen around you and just immerse yourself in a place. And I think that's something Rhodes Scholar does in a really unique way, is give you an educational value and help you firmly establish a sense of the place that you're in, which then helps you reflect on it in such a different way and have a much closer connection. And yeah, that's what's so important and impactful about travel.
I agree. And it's that idea of unlocking your wonder and your curiosity, because it's only by entering in with good faith and responsibility and doing it in a sustainable way and in a trustworthy way. You have to enter travel with some humility and a willingness to be open and to learn. Because I think that if you go in thinking I know everything, you're going to miss the authentic experiences that defined your time in Peru or your time in Italy or my time in the Galapagos or in Birmingham even. It's so important to be open to those experiences. And that's something that I think Rhodes Scholar does very well. And I first discovered you with my dad. My dad is now turning 84 this summer, but he had wanted to do your Rockies program. And we then wound up doing Antarctica as well, because at 80, he decided he needed to go to Antarctica. And I volunteer as tribute. But,
Yes,
I remember learning about Rhodes Scholar, and I knew you from a friend through your previous incarnation as Elder Hostel. And I thought, I'm going to be like the youngest person on this trip. And I was so surprised because you've really evolved. And I was definitely not the youngest person. And it was lovely to see sort of the intergenerational approach to travel, and that it's absolutely a place where if you're a senior citizen and you're traveling, you're going to be treated with respect and kindness and understanding that you have so much to contribute. But there's also space for Gen X and millennials and Gen Z as well. And that was really nice to see. How is that a deliberate ethos on the part of the company?
So our main focus is travelers 50 and up. And I love this because a goal of ours is to foster this long-term curiosity and an interest in lifelong learning, which is an incredible thing and really an overlooked group of people who want to learn, who have their own lifetime of information and they want to go and add more to it. So I think that's the main focus for us. But we do have intergenerational programming for families and grandparents and grandchildren, and those are really cool programs. And just one example, there is a woman who's worked at Rhodes Scholar for I don't know how many years, and she took her granddaughter on as many programs as she possibly could during the summer, the grandparent programs that they host. And they've gone all over the world together. And now her granddaughter works for Rhodes Scholar. So that's a pretty incredible place. And it taught this young woman, curiosity and an interest in travel and an interest in other cultures at such a young age, and has influenced her in that way. So I think that there's a lot of gifts to be given in that experience. And then I know Rhodes Scholars kind of constantly evolving. You can't make it to 51 years and not be curious and trying new things. And so I think we'll be in an interesting place as we start to serve more people in Gen X as our next big group that's coming up, our next cohort, if you will. And I think that will, with each generation that we serve, the way that we provide programming evolves. So we started on college campuses in the Northeast, and people came for a week and stayed in dorms and took classes, and that was really unique in 1975. And now look at us, you are able to take your dad on a cruise to Antarctica, and people can join us for programming in 100 different countries. It's pretty wonderful and unique.
That is amazing and unique. So before we go, Bryn, I'm going to ask you the last question that I always love to end with, which is, what's currently bringing you hope?
Mm-hmm. Oh, I'm excited by people willing to be critical thinkers. For me, that's a personality thing. I don't know what it is, but I want to ask questions. I want to dig in and understand the why behind things. And so when I see our participants with that same amount of curiosity, and they're eager and interested, and they want to see more places and understand cultures, I find that really inspiring. And then when I work with our partners that are making these programs happen, and they're enthusiastic about evolving things and trying to push the envelope and try to improve a little piece here or there, that kind of openness and curiosity and just willingness to engage with people and try, and maybe we fail, but we're going to keep going. That to me is inspiring and gets me excited about the next person I get to talk to and the next project I get to work on. So I think critical thinking people who want to go out in the world and have a positive impact, that's what makes me feel really hopeful.
I love that. Well, Bryn, thank you so much for joining us today. And if people want to learn more about the programs, I will drop some links into the show notes so that you can learn a little bit more about Rhodes Scholar and about your sustainability efforts. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
You've been listening to the Adventures in Learning podcast with your host, Dr. Diane. If you like what you're hearing, please subscribe, download, and let us know what you think, and please tell a friend. If you want the full show notes and the pictures, please go to drdianeadventures.com. We look forward to you joining us on our next adventure.